Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about the issue. The front of the store, the back of the store, doesn't really matter because the better experience your customers have, the more they will come back to you for everything they need when they need it. And they will bring their entire tribes with them, their coworkers, family members, friends, everybody. And continuing in our cybersecurity series, I have my friends Adam and Richard with us, who are going to talk about ransomware today. Everybody's fun topic. It seems as though when the story faded from CDK, everybody went back to, business as usual. Nothing to worry about. That stuff's never going to happen to me, right? Well, fun fact, in 2024, the average cost of a ransomware attack that was reported, and Adam reminded me earlier, that which was reported, because a lot of smaller companies don't report because they're afraid of losing customers. But it was $5.13 million with a capital M, which is a 574% increase over 6 years. That's crazy. Just because CDK is not in the headlines anymore with the ransomware attack does not mean the problem went away. As we're having this conversation, the cyber criminals are plotting their next attack. The question is, who will be their next victim? So, welcome, Adam, Richard. Please introduce yourselves.
All right, I'll go with Adam because it's first in the alphabet. I'm Adam Dennis. Been on here a couple of times. I run Surge Metrics, which is a company that provides services to auto dealers and tractor dealers. And then I also run a company called AntiguaRecon, which provides cybersecurity training and services where I live, which is down in the Caribbean. So, I come at this conversation from the point of view of an ethical hacker and some of the methodologies that are used to do an attack. And now Rich will give his rundown.
Cheers, Adam. Thanks, Paul, for having us on. Hi, Adam, and hi to everyone watching. So, my name's Richard. I'm the founder of Brainstorm Security. Previously to being a founder, I was a cop for 28 years over in the UK and ended up, the last part of my career was dealing with cybersecurity issues and criminals who were committing cybercrime. So on the back of that, I set up this company doing ransomware negotiation and tabletop exercises and doing some training around cybersecurity. So that's me in a nutshell.
Welcome, Richard.
Cheers.
So, ransomware is not just something that happens and it's one thing, right? There are many things. There's downtime. There's data recovery. There's massive loss of trust from your customers. There's operational disruption. And, like I said before, it runs into the millions and millions of dollars. So, gentlemen, what are the common misconceptions businesses have about the actual cost of a ransomware attack?
You want to take that, Richard?
Yeah, to be fair, I think most people don't actually consider the cost of it, full stop. They are sort of blind to it, really, because often cybersecurity things, it's not particularly sexy. It certainly doesn't generate any revenue, and it's seen as a bit of a loss leader, really, for a company when they're looking at it. So they will invest the absolute minimum, if anything, into it. It's only when you then look at larger companies or small companies even, because that's the other misconception, that these hackers out there, they're not just specifically targeting one particular type. They will go for small companies, they'll go for medium-sized companies, they'll go for enterprise companies. If they can get in and there's something of value that they can negotiate with, that's what they're going to go for, and they will try and get as much money as they possibly can. So that's one part of it. For a monetary value, an example, there's a little company over here called Jaguar Land Rover. Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah, so they've had a little bit of trouble with hackers breaking into their system, shut down all production. So released their figures for this year, and in their profit, I can't remember the exact rate, but I remember the percentages, but their percentage of profit this year was 0.8% of their profit. The rest of it got taken out of the fact that the that has
Lose your audio a little bit, Richard.
Yeah, I think
Sorry?
your audio is a little quiet.
Can you
Your
hear
audio
us
is a
now?
little down.
Oh, I'll move my microphone a little bit closer. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah, so like I was saying there, so it was less than 1% of their total profit for that year. That's all they've been able to take home. So 99.2% was taken as a result of this cyber attack. So
Wow.
that is a company on the brink, in effect. The government have had to support them to be able to get through that incident now, as they actually had to help the supply chain of the people making the parts for that particular of those particular vehicles. So you can see it has a massive effect, and it should be a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of the motor industry, that it could affect any part of that supply chain as well. So even if you're not hit, if somebody else further down the line gets hit, it could still affect your company. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah, let me jump in and sort of tell a story from a smaller perspective. That's not Jaguar, but I have a good friend of mine who was hired. This is probably about 2-3 months ago for a large law firm in the U.S. And he was hired as their IT consultant. And in his interviews, he asked them, what's your incident response policy? And they looked at him. They were confused, and they're like, okay, so what do you have any plans in place that if you get attacked, whether it's some type of denial of service attack or whether it's a ransomware attack, do you have plans in place of how you would respond? Have you run through the scenarios of what you would do, who would do what, blah, blah, blah? No, they said it's not a concern of theirs. They're not worried about it because they actually had a large cybersecurity company working with them. So that's fine. They did not have a plan. 2 days into his job, when he got hired, he discovered that there was an incident in progress, that someone had penetrated their infrastructure and that was in the process of copying all of that law firm's files onto a particular computer for then porting it away and then basically blackmailing it. And basically they were in the process of putting a ransomware bomb basically on the infrastructure to blow and basically turn everything into a rock. If not for the fact that he was hired and he was smart enough to not trust the situation and checked it out, they would have been screwed. Within a day, he had the attackers isolated in a particular part of the network and blocked off from everything else. They had gotten some files, but not a volume. And then you go a few weeks in the future, and a major cybersecurity company was working, doing all of the forensic evidence building, and the FBI was involved, right? So I can tell you, though, that company is not publicizing what happened, right? They have FBI working with them, all that stuff. They're not going to go out there and raise their hand and say, hey, everybody, we were potentially compromised and your legal files were hauled away to somewhere in the cloud. So that sort of brings up like the first point, to ask yourself, anybody who's listening here, whether it's now or in the future, they play us back. My beard will probably be grayer by the time they play back. But ask yourself, what's our incident response? What's our security policy? What are we doing to prepare ourselves for an attack, both in terms of how we store our data, right? And that takes some planning, which would then protect you against a ransomware attack. Because if you get an attack, well, you have a very good data storage program. Who cares? Flatline everything, basically reload all of your software and everything else, and you're good to go, right? But if you don't, big vulnerability. Secondly is, how are you prepared in terms of, do you have someone lined up like Richard who could then step in and negotiate for you? Do you have someone like my friend who went in and from an ethical hacking point of view, had taken a look at their infrastructure and hardened it, and that's called blue teaming. He hardened it against attack. So if you can't answer the question that you have any security policy / incident response plan, and if you don't have some of these people in place, and then finally, if you don't make planning for cybersecurity awareness and planning for stuff like this a part of your corporate culture, it's a big mistake, because you can have a really, really good plan and policies and everything else in place for securing your infrastructure. But if your people are stupid and they don't know what they're doing, all it takes is clicking the wrong thing and download it. One mistake.
And most attacks happen that way.
Yep. One mistake.
It's the human element where it breaks down. I just want to say hello to my friends Larry Feldman and Stan Scher, whom I'm going to be seeing in they're playing together the end of December. So we're going to go watch them play. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Welcome, gentlemen.
What are they playing?
In New Hope, Pennsylvania. Larry's in a rock band, the Real Fugitives.
Oh. Okay.
He's really good. You may just think of him as a really smart trainer and recruiter guy. Oh no, there's a lot more to that noggin than you can imagine. I've watched him play live a couple of years ago, and it was a phenomenal show. Last year I had to travel, so I was unable to make it, but I've scheduled it on my calendar this time with blocks on either end of the day, so that there should not, barring a flight cancellation, be any reason why I won't see him. But yeah, so to your point, that aren't there legal requirements though that companies have to follow?
Well, I mean, yeah, you have in the U.S. I mean, I'm not sure what you guys have in England, Richard, but in the U.S. you have some basically legal requirements. Safeguards rule, for example, from the FTC, and that has certain requirements in terms of the number of what are called vulnerability assessments that you do per year, and I'm pretty sure it's like 2 per year for that. And when you do a vulnerability assessment, you hire somebody like, for example, my company, to come in and, as ethical hackers, attack your infrastructure to identify potential weaknesses. But what you don't do when you're doing a vulnerability assessment is try to exploit those weaknesses. Now, the next thing is a penetration test that I think Safeguards rules 1 per year. Is for that, you're actually trying to exploit the weaknesses that you might find. And then finally, what's thrown on top of that is cybersecurity awareness training, and also phishing, simulated phishing attacks, to try to capture people making the mistake of selecting something they're not supposed to. And there's some other laws out there as well, and certainly depending on your insurance company, you might have certain requirements you need to follow. But I wouldn't govern what I do in this day and age strictly based on law. Getting back to my point, I would build it into my corporate culture to think seriously about security, right? So just like if you're, Richard was in law enforcement for many, many years. If he went out on the street, he was trained to behave a certain way, to have situational awareness when he was out on the street. He walks outside a door, he's going on patrol, he has situational awareness about what's happening around him. As a company, you need to teach your staff to have situational awareness of what are the potential vulnerabilities. If I get a file sent to me, it doesn't matter if it was sent to me by Jesus Christ. I should still have the infrastructure set up to scan that file, and before I open it, I should still check it by having it scanned, right? If I get an email saying, "Hey Adam, can you do something for me that involves me clicking whatever," you should have a verification rule in place that you always verify. Right? You don't need a complicated policy. It's just if something comes in, you verify through other means, not from what's written in the email or the text or whatever the means of communication is. You verify that it's a legitimate request. Will it take you a minute?
Independent. I call them up on the phone. I open nothing. I call them,
Exactly.
Send me. And guess what? A percentage of the time I'll get, "No, I'm sorry, my email was compromised." But most people don't do that. You just click.
Yeah. Not rocket science. So there's different things you can do. I'll throw to Richard. Richard's smarter than me anyhow. So
Yeah, I mean, in the UK,
you don't have to agree.
well, no, it's true. No, in the UK, we've got the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, which you would normally have to report to, and it's like a a compliance thing if personal information has been stolen. Places like Australia, they've got some different rules where you've got to legally notify the government that there's been a cyber breach, you've been attacked. And it's slowly coming in. There is an Act of Parliament in the UK that's going through at the moment, where they're trying to make that very similar to the Australian method. But it will be targeting, in particular, things like government and national critical infrastructure and things like that. But just like Adam said, it doesn't really matter whether you've got to report it or not. You've just got to consider, how is this going to affect you and your company and everybody else who is employed by your company, and think of it in them sort of remits, really, because if you don't handle the situation correctly, there won't be a company, you won't have any employees, your customers will be gone because no one will trade with you. You will have lost all your money and your company will go into administration. So there can be some really serious considerations and decisions that you as a CEO or as a board will have to make as to which way you should go in dealing with it, which is why, again, Adam said about practice this stuff beforehand. And it doesn't have to be massive. It can be some phishing exercises which are done short and sweet, a couple at a time per month. Things like tabletop exercises, 1 or 2 a year, even just for a couple of hours. We know everybody is super busy, but having an opportunity to practice these things and start thinking about, well, how is it actually going to affect us and what things come up? Because often a lot of these things, it's all down to communication. And what you'll be thinking is the most important thing about. Some people will be worrying about how to get Bitcoin to pay these people and what your ethics are. We shouldn't be paying these criminals. They might be funding other criminality. They might be funding terrorism. It might be, for whatever reason, you might decide that isn't the way to go. So that might be something that's on your sort of radar. But it might be something as simple as the press get involved and the implications of that and managing that communication, which could be your biggest issue that you end up dealing with. So the Bitcoin and everything else is all sorted. And also the time constraints of trying to do things, because offenders will use things like authority, time pressures. They will apply lots of pressure to try and make you make emotional decisions. And I'm quite sure, Paul, your sales staff will have had lots of training on what makes people tick and makes people make a decision. And when you want to close a deal, there will be a lead up to that and there'll be a decision made as to how you're going to get that deal closed. It's very similar in this, that the offenders will be wanting to close their deal and get as much money as they can as quickly as they can and move on to the next victim. So, yeah, I think that's kind of...
If anyone in the audience has not seen a movie called The Beekeeper, I would highly recommend it. It talks exactly about this situation here. And while there are, legal requirements to have to report, the fact of the matter is, if a company is really small and they don't want to report it, unless somebody finds out about it, they're not going to report it. Some of the bigger companies, it doesn't seem like they have much choice, because I seem to get letters on a weekly basis from whether it be healthcare agencies, banks, medical records, you name it, some letter from some company where they're notifying me that there's been a data breach and that they're offering, the 2 years worth of identity protection. I already have identity protection, but that just adds to the cost, right? I mean, what does it cost for identity protection for one person for 1 year, much less 2 years? And that just adds into injury to the cost that you're facing.
Hey, Paul, let me add a few other little pieces here. Now, I mentioned the federal law. A lot of
Yeah.
states mimicked the safeguards rule when they created rulings at the state level. And then the other thing to remember is if you have cybersecurity insurance, you damn well better read that fine print, because the fine print is going to require you to do certain things, often reflecting the safeguards rule or your state's rules, to have that in place in case you get compromised. If you get compromised and you haven't done it, sorry, you're not getting any money. Because a lot of the insurance companies have smartened up, because early on when cybersecurity insurance started, they didn't have those requirements, and so they were losing their shirts in a lot of cases. But now they're requiring, look, you have a certain obligation to do certain things to be able to merit collecting the insurance if you get attacked. So that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
It's almost leaving your car running with the key in the ignition and the door unlocked in a bad area, and then expecting that they're going to pay for your stolen car. It's just not going to happen.
No, that's right. I totally agree with you there. I think the analogy of sort of fire safety, you will do a fire drill with your company, you'll have fire extinguishers, you'll have fire exits, all these different things, because you're trying to prevent a fire, and your insurance ain't going to pay out if you've not done those things. And there's probably regulations as well, which is why a lot of people do it. But it's exactly the same with this, that you can get hit with ransomware, a cyber attack, and if you've not practiced and thought about these things before and got specialist services in, you've got some systems in place to detect attacks, you've got your phishing training and things like that going on, you're going to prevent that fire taking hold, and the fire's not going to be there. It's important.
What are some of the most common signs that an organization is vulnerable to ransomware? Just having employees, or what?
A business leadership that's disconnected from their day-to-day IT needs. I mean, I'm laughing, but if you're the leader of a company and this is not as important to you as the insurance you have for continuity of your business, or as important as the money you're earning month to month, because this type of security awareness training and preparedness will protect those earnings and your reputation. Yeah, the first thing is a business leadership that doesn't seem to care, doesn't ask the question, isn't saying, hey, what have we done recently for any awareness training for the staff? That's one thing. I think getting to the point of just asking the simple question, what's our security and incident response policy? If they can't answer that question, that's a sure sign that there's a problem, right? Security policy is broad. It includes incident response as part of it. Security policy would get into a lot of those things that would help you avoid problems, such as requiring multi-factor authentication for everything, such as the principle of least privilege when it comes to access to critical information on your infrastructure. In other words, if I'm an accountant, I should only have access to anything dealing with accounting. I should I should not have access to the whole network. Conversely, down the line, if I'm in sales, if I'm in this, if I'm in that, everybody's compartmentalized. If you can't answer that question of whether or not you have a compartmentalized infrastructure following the principle of least privilege, you got a problem, right? If there's no cybersecurity awareness training, or you're doing the training but only on a checklist where you sign up with some company that then sends the stuff periodically, and it's like a checklist. Oh, they took this test, or they did this phishing exercise. I'm sorry, that sucks. That's a bad idea, because you're not really making it a part of your culture to be aware and discuss it, and to actually make sure that people are learning. And I have a good friend of mine, Kerry Johnson, and we did a show with him a while back, Paul, when we were talking about awareness training. If you can't baseline the improvement of your team over time when it comes to awareness training, that's a problem. If you can't, don't have the data to show to them, to be able to show that they've actually learned, that's a problem. So there's a whole series of different things. MFA is one of the most important, because I worked with a company on incident response a little while back, and they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because they didn't have multi-factor authentication on their email. An individual compromised the email of one of the principals in the company, and then they were able to send out fake payment requests to customers. And the money was collected, and poof, it was gone. There's like no way to find that money. So, Richard, I'll toss to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if companies are treating it as a tick box exercise and they're not treating it seriously, they're quite frankly doomed. It's about trying to educate your employees and to make it personal to them, really. If it is personal to them and they think, okay, I'll use a password manager, or I'll not, because I'm sure everyone's seen somebody taking one of these tests for not necessarily phishing, but like you get the video test and it will give you some advice about cybersecurity, and they're just clicking through and they're trying to go as fast as they can because they want to move on and actually get on with their real job. It's short period of time, but have it just engaging and have people talking and telling stories and getting them to do scenarios where they will learn from that. And if they make it secure for themselves and they think, what's in it for me? Well, if you can make them secure and recognize that they'll be secure at home, they're going to keep your company safe. And it doesn't take a lot. It's a really small thing that you can do, that is.
I think one of the biggest underlying problems is that this mentality of it's never going to happen to me. Okay, I think that definitely leads the way, and then you add to that business owners that have so many responsibilities today. Right, there's so much uncertainty. They're lean and mean, if you will, and more people or less people are doing more work. And quite frankly, a lot of these business owners don't even understand the technology, much less the risk behind it. And it would be one thing if cybersecurity people were to go out to the different businesses and want to talk to the owners and educate them. But the reality is, they're like this. So if you go to talk to them about it, you go to share information about it, there's some excuse. There's either a gatekeeper that they can't get by, or they're in the proverbial meeting when somebody shows up, and they have no idea. They don't understand the technology. They don't understand the risk or the danger. And because of that, I think we're going to see more of this. When I saw that number of 574% increase in the value of the ransomware that people lost, the money over 6 years, that's huge. Because when you think about the rate at which technology advances, okay, what might have taken 6 years before now might only take 2 years, right? And with the advent of AI, where things are getting smarter and smarter, we may be 6 months what used to take 6 years. So that's some really scary stuff there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In particular with the AI thing, as defenders, we'll be using AI and we'll be trying to speed up processes, but the attackers absolutely are using AI, and they'll use it for things like the negotiation. They'll use it for the reconnaissance on trying to identify a company.
Oh, yeah.
So
there's some really sweet tools that are coming out right now. Yeah,
there's some great tools. You've got insider threats, so all you need is one person in your company who's had an issue with somebody else, a manager or whatever, and they've just left or they're thinking of leaving. They might think, right, okay, well, I'll sell access to your company, and that's it. And so there's other elements of training and that needs to be done, but certainly with the advances of things like AI, they're well ahead of the game. And literally a 30-second search using AI will come up with lots of information that is just gold for an attacker to how to attack them. And I'm sure if you ask most hackers, is that going to be their sort of initial route in? Yeah, it probably is now, because it's amazing.
in the past, and not too distant past, the social engineering component of it, there were people in call centers that their business was to go and research companies and people within companies and find out the types of projects that they're working on so that they can craft the just right email to get them when they're vulnerable at the end of the day, Friday, something like that, right? But now with AI, you don't need to spend hours. You can create a simple prompt, and that prompt will give you all of the information you need as to who to go after, what they're working on, right down to crafting the specific emails, the phishing emails, that will most likely get through to that person.
Yeah, and they'll also use it for things like cloning audio. So you talking now, I could clone your audio, and then there could be a phone call straight into your finance team, and it might be you saying, I'm having a nightmare day, I just need you to pay this one particular bill. The account details have changed. I can't do it because I'm in the car. Can you source it now? And because it's coming from you, or believe you, it happens.
Yeah, there was a large development firm out in Hong Kong that had that happen, resulting in millions of dollars that were lost, where it was an AI call that came in mimicking an individual. I need this paid, da-da-da-da-da. The individual on the receiving end thought, oh, okay, that's Richard, no problem, pays the bill and realizes they've been totally hoodwinked. Again, on that one, all it would have taken was a little verification, get on the phone, call Richard. Hey, Richard, did you just make this request? No, it would have been prevented, right? So I think one of the things that I want to really have anybody who's listening today walk away from this conversation knowing is a lot of the things that you can do to become better prepared against an attack are non-technical.
Things like exactly like you just said there, you've got the opportunity to put a password. As part of your policies, if it's sort of discussed and talked about, you could have just a simple Christmas tree, for example, and you would say, well, what's the password for us to do that? And you would say Christmas tree, because you know that, and that could rotate on a regular basis. Really simple, but it would stop somebody from outside the organization being able to do that. So you would stop 95% of the attacks. Yeah, you might have an insider threat that it wouldn't stop, but there are other ways to identify those insider threats. So,
And in some cases, you don't need a password because, for example, if Richard contacted me and it seemed strange of what he was asking me to do, or you, Paul, all I have to do is call and say, hey, when did we first meet? Or in the case of you, Paul, what do we love to joke around about when it comes to you and food, for example? And there's no way someone who is going to know what we've shared personally together, right?
Yeah. Not in that span of time.
Yeah. So again, that's non-technical. The whole MFA thing that I mentioned earlier is largely non-technical because, there are all these tools that are out there. There's Google Authenticator. There's a bunch of tools that are, and a lot of the software that you use these days have a button that you just select to turn on MFA. Bam. Okay, so you got that in place. And you just make it a requirement across your whole company that MFA for all of the email is required or any critical transfer is required or any type of stuff done. That wasn't something that the CEO needed to know how the hell MFA works. That CEO just says, look, we have to have MFA mandated for critical functions where we can't be compromised, right? So again, not rocket science.
But let me ask you this, though. Here's an interesting scenario. Somebody's phone gets cloned. How does it impact MFA?
It depends on what they have on the phone.
But if the phone, because I've not fully understood this piece of it, but if their phone is cloned, doesn't the phone ring in both places? Or is it just the data access on the phone?
Yeah, it can do. I mean, there's something called SIM swapping, and not wanting to go sort of too technical, you will have an attacker who will contact Vodafone or T-Mobile or whoever the provider is, say they've lost their phone, can you send out a new SIM card, or can you transfer that number to this number? And if they're convincing and know some details about that particular person, they can then have everything, all the calls and text messages intercepted and then forwarded onto the new number, which in the fact of sort of MFA, when you're talking multi-factor authentication, that's one of the reasons why they suggest not to have it straight to a phone and to use authenticator apps and other things. But
yeah.
To have something to start off with, brilliant. Yeah.
And the reality is, Paul, is that no security policy or counter methodology is 100%. It's just not. But if you have a myriad of policies that are in place, you know, again, a security policy requires you to do certain things, that protects you so much better than cases where you don't have it or where it's poorly thought out. So, I mean, it's kind of like for your house, right? Like I always require any of our doors in our house always have to open outward. Why? Because it's really hard to kick a door in when it opens outward best rather than opening inward. That's one protection. Okay, there we go. And then secondly, what I require is a dog, and a dog that can eat people. So that's another thing that takes another chunk of people out. And then security cameras. And I'm not in the US anymore, so I can't really own a gun that easily. But the point is, you have these series of, look at it as defense in depth, right? And taking from the military, defense in depth. We have these layer of defenses. That makes you better and better and better protected. It doesn't mean 100%. It never is. If anybody tells you that, they're lying. They're bullshitting you. But it makes you more secure. And separate from like the steps I was talking about earlier, there's also something called endpoint monitoring. Now, endpoint monitoring, there's a bunch of companies that have solutions out there on market. There's a company called Arctic Wolf. I know they have one that's quite good. But what endpoint monitoring does is, say you're a dealership and you want to put an endpoint monitoring software in place, what that'll do is when each of the devices that you have will have the endpoint monitoring software on them. And the software will study the behavior of the individual and what they have access to. Now, mind you, it's important that you already have a segmented structure following principle of least privilege, meaning that, like I said, the accountant only sees accountant stuff and what have you. So when you have that software in place, what it'll do is it'll give you a warning, for the IT staff or whomever, ding, 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 ding. Richard, the accountant, is now trying to access the IT infrastructure. He's trying to get into the servers. Well, Richard, why as an accountant are you trying to get into that stuff? And Richard will probably look at you and say, that wasn't me. In which case, you have an active incident.
I'm not coming from the UK. I'm coming from France or Germany. And that's another thing that would think, right, okay. And I'm doing it in the middle of the night when I should be asleep. And all these things can be automated for that bit of software to pick up on. Very simple.
Yeah. So that's another thing that someone can do. And it's not hugely costly in most cases. And it's an added layer of protection.
I'd like to jump on that also, that a lot of times, these attacks, they don't just show up and wave a flag and say, I'm here. A lot of times they're in your system for quite some time before you even know they're there. And they're gathering information, okay? One tip that I would like to leave the audience with is something very basic. Since a lot of these attacks happen via email, a lot of people's emails are vulnerable because most of the cases involve somebody clicking on something stupid. Like Larry may recall, I shared a funny, how the entire company had to take a 7 a.m. cybersecurity course because somebody clicked on their chance to get a free iPhone 17, which is never going to happen, right? But one thing that people can do, you can go into your email and you can go into the settings and you can look at something like email forwarding. Because a lot of times when somebody cracks into your email, they will set up automatic forwarding that you're not even aware of. And the emails that you get will then automatically be forwarded onto that malicious actor. So that's something that somebody can do you could do this at home, right? Just check your email, go in the settings, check forwarding, and make sure there isn't some email address populated in there that you have no idea about.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Again, that's
Paul.
not rocket science.
Yeah,
No.
absolutely. Paul, I was going to suggest there is a national newspaper in the UK that develops a game to practice ransomware negotiation, or to give people a flavour, because for most people, unless they've been a victim of it, they've never encountered ransomware negotiation. I just wondered maybe if your viewers would like to see that. I can post the details of the site onto the chat so people can pick
Yeah,
that
that'd be
up,
great.
if you're happy with that. And maybe we could give Adam a little run out and sort of see how he would fare against some threat actors. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. I say you compromise the system and take them down.
Okay, let's have a little. I'll try and share my screen, and we will see if.
So this is where I get to play an auto dealer is being compromised.
Yeah.
Do I get the cusp when I realize I've been compromised, Paul, or is this
a family show? No profanity, though.
Right. Hopefully, you
can.
Oh,
you're going to share the screen, right?
Yeah, you have
I'm
to
just sharing a screen. So, okay, right. So this is. You are a chief executive of a company called Sinari, a successful virtual medicine company. You can be a car dealer for today, Adam. You're based in the US, but unfortunately you've been hit with a ransomware attack and it's affected day-to-day activity, but you've been disrupted. So we'll go through and we'll play it, and think of this as your screen as we go through. What I'd like to do first, before we start, is just cover a couple of little questions with you. So for you, Adam, what do you think defining success would be for yourself in a ransomware scenario? So would it be like a low payment, or data recovery, or time delays? What's success?
I'm a stubborn-minded individual. I don't want to pay a goddamn cent. Oops, I swore. Sorry. I don't want to pay a cent.
You're a cheapskate, Adam. Is that what you're telling us?
Talk to my wife. She'll agree.
Brilliant. So looking at the emotional side of this, what would your primary emotional goal be? Would it be to sort of intimidate the attackers? Would it be like be empathetic with them, be sort of professional, or just something else?
I think I'd like to intimidate them, but I probably think being professional, I don't want to spook them, so I'll take it as it comes.
Okay. I'm not going to give you any hints or tips, and you're going to have to bear in mind this is.
We're going to see if I'm going to lose some money.
A computer bot, and it's not necessarily going to give you all the answers that you want. It's multi-choice, so we'll just have to play through it and sort of see how you get on. But it's a bit of an indicator, and it will make you think, I hope. And finally,
well, actually, Paul is my silent partner in running this auto dealership, so I might have to consult him periodically.
Absolutely. It's a bit like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, this TV show in the UK. I don't know if you've got it in the States, where you got an opportunity to phone a friend. So you can always have Paul as a friend to phone.
Yeah.
So what's your absolute red line, Adam? What's the one specific demand or threat that might be made by the attacker that you would immediately think, right, that's it, I'm going to terminate this negotiation. Don't matter what the data's worth. Is there anything?
If the amount of money is so high that it's absurd, I walk away.
Okay, cool. Right, let's play the game. So, just bring this over. There we go.
By the way, everybody, this is my acting debut.
There's our desktop, and what you'll see is a little README file here. We're going to click on that because often when your system is encrypted, you can't open anything, but there will be one file on the system that you can open that just says README. So on this one, it says, if you're reading this, your network has been penetrated and your files and data have been encrypted. We know you've got hundreds of employees and thousands of customers. We've gained access to all your servers. We know the data you hold will damage your reputation if it is published or sold online. Contact us below immediately to pay the ransom, and we will decrypt the data and safely return it. So then we go, proceed to negotiation. Normally, this would take you to the dark web to do the negotiation. And if you don't know how to get to the dark web, they normally give you a nice guide on how to get there. So here we go. Your computer is blocked. You will see there's a time limit remaining, 1 week, and the current price is 1.7 million. I'm just gonna move that a little bit so we can see the question. I'm just going to move my microphone so I can see the screen myself. So let's have a look.
Hold on. Hey, Richard, right now I'm conferring with my head of IT. Do we have available backups to just reload everything? No?
They're still checking
You're
on it.
behind on the
You've got
backups?
backups, but we don't know if they work. Right.
No, he hasn't. He's done no tests to try to reestablish the backups, and for the last 3 weeks, there have been no backups. So hold on one second, Richard. Joe, you're fired. Okay, back here, Richard.
And that's common also, when you talk about backups, a lot of companies, they don't do backups, or they don't understand the importance of backup after their stuff has been compromised.
And they don't understand the importance of practicing and testing whether or not they can actually re-enable from a backup, right?
Yeah.
How quickly?
So I have no backups, Richard. I'm in trouble.
Yeah, you are. So on this one, we've been expecting you. We know your annual revenue is 100 million. Now, in reality, these offenders, they will work out what your revenue is. They'll look at your company figures if it's been published publicly, and they will know this information. They want 1.7 million, which they think is a reasonable amount. To protect, you must pay as soon as possible. Do you understand? So you've got 3 options. This is outrageous. You won't get away with making demands like this. Or I'm the CEO of the company based in San Francisco. I founded the company 10 years ago, and we are discussing your offer internally. Or we've received your demands and are discussing options, and we will report back as soon as possible. We intend to pay you. Which one would you like, Adam?
Option 3.
Option 3, we intend to pay you. Right, there's a breaking news story taking place. So the company, the virtual medicine company, was founded in 2013, has been hit by a ransomware attack, or Adam's dealership, we'll call it. Almost 60% of companies targeted in the past year reportedly paid a ransom to restore their data. Time will tell if this is genuine or not. How do we respond to that as a company? To the media?
I think we have to investigate the rumors, but we want to control it. So I guess option 1.
Option 1, respond. We need to stop the rumors. So you confirm you're dealing with a ransomware attack, which helps you set the record straight. But now staff are unhappy because they weren't told about the incident first. You just can't win.
No, I'm sort of taking the lessons from CDK, right, Paul?
So we've made ourselves very clear this is the offenders. Pay the full amount in 7 days, or we will release and sell your sensitive data. Could you please corroborate this is a genuine attack and provide sufficient evidence that we're at material risk of harm? Or understood, can you send proof of data that you've taken from us? Which one do you want to go with?
Wow, one is very bureaucratic, legalistic. The other one is more conversational. We have 7 days, so let's go with option 1. I'll be a little bit, I'll listen to my lawyers. We want to see proof that they have relevant data. Because for the story I told you guys earlier, what happened was with the law firm is my friend who had blocked the attack in progress, they were only limited to data that was really irrelevant. So the law firm knew that they didn't really get what they wanted. So in this, you want to make sure the data they have is really relevant, because if the attack is not successful, they may only have pieces of data. So anyhow, let's see what they have.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in law enforcement, we'd call this proof of life in a kidnap.
Yep.
And you want to make
Yep.
sure that the victim is still alive before you do anything.
Yep.
So could you please corroborate this is a genuine attack? We do not understand. Speak plainly, Adam, and do not waste their time. This is someone who's dealt with you before, Adam. It will only increase the cost of the ransom. So you've now got, can you send proof of what you've taken from us? So I just hit that because you've confused them. That's important because often the people you're dealing with, they might be not speaking English. They might be from Russia, they might be from China, they could be from anywhere else in the world, and their understanding of English might be quite limited. So you've got to be able to speak with these people in a way that they will understand. So we've had a message from the IT desk saying confirmation of attack. We've received 2 files and analysed them in a secure environment. One contains customer information, the other about staff. We should assume this is genuine. So the baddies have obviously sent this across and have proved that this is correct.
Let me just jump out of character here for a second. So It says review them in a secure environment. This is important. You don't want to help them in their attack by when they send the information for you to review it on your computer and therefore leave yourself potentially invulnerable in installing a payload for them to extend their attack. So make sure if you get anything, you're doing it in a secure space. Sorry, I just thought I'd point that out.
No, that's great. So the IT have just said what I was saying about English might not be their first language, and they are sophisticated cyber criminals. You just respond, thanks for letting us know. So you've just updated them, and then it says, thank you for the proof. We are discussing the attack with our cyber insurance company.
Option 1.
And we'll
get
back
English well.
to
We want to go simple
you shortly. Yeah. Oh, thank you for the proof. We'll be back. Why have you chosen that one?
Because if they have an issue with language, it's roughly the same thing. It's just simple.
Okay, excellent. For me, I'm thinking if you tell them you've got insurance, they think there's a payday.
Oh, yeah, true.
We'll go with option 1, like you said. So from the cyber insurance company. Good afternoon. Following the alleged cyber attack, we will conduct a security audit before taking further action as per our contract. What did you say before, Adam, about insurance?
Yeah, if you don't have the proper infrastructure in place and the policies in place and the actions in place that meet the requirements of law and the cybersecurity insurance company, good luck.
Yeah. So you're insured up to 300,000, but the insurance company have advised you not to tell the attackers you have insurance, as they may expect you to pay in full. Okay. So we'll confirm that.
Before you go further on that, you recall earlier, so the insurance is 300,000, yet the average ransom attack was 5.13 million in 2024.
Yeah. So we're now talking if you look at the timer there, we're now down to 5 days instead of 7. So what you will start getting now is some more threatening type sort of messages. So they're saying, hurry, your time is running out. You have 5 days left. So you've got 2 options, Adam.
Yeah, pressure and panic. They want to make you do a panic-driven decision.
Yeah. So please return our data. You are asking for all the money. We have to pay staff. I've built this company from nothing. You don't understand the damage you are doing. Or you could go with revenues might be large, but this would be all the money we have to pay staff. We need to work out how to generate the funds. Please, can we have more time?
Let's go with option 2.
Option 2. So So you basically said, yeah, that's the option. And then we've had a message from the IT department saying, we've used the additional time to deploy our backup servers and we can now resume some day-to-day work. Brilliant. But it could be months before we're fully operational. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to recover the stolen data about staff and customers. Okay, so you know that. I'm conscious we're getting towards 2 o'clock here. So you've spoke with your bosses. Can we have 2 more days? This is the final deadline, they've said. So we'll get back to you shortly. Yeah. The union are now getting in touch with the company saying, can you provide an update regarding business-wide outage? Are the rumors of the ransomware attack true? And if personal data and salaries and home addresses...
I'm going to ignore the staff.
What do you plan to do? Write an email to staff? Set up an all-hands
I'm going to ignore them right now.
Ignore them, yeah. They don't need to know. But this is the interesting thing about this. That you will start getting bogged down unless you practice this stuff and have an idea of how you might handle it. There's all this other stuff that comes out, and then you can write policies and procedures to be able to cover these instances. But it's just kind of having the opportunity to go through it, really. So you ignore the email, HR managers soon gets in touch. The employees are very upset, being kept in the dark, and morale has dropped. Anxious shareholders urge you to find a solution as soon as possible. The baddies are saying, hurry. You got 3 options. Would there be room for negotiation? The amount you're asking for would spell the end of the company. Can you lower your demand? Or we do not have instant access to money. So you've not got the money available. You can't do it. And then there's a request for a meeting by the board of directors to discuss things and to have an honest discussion with them. As let's say, can you please confirm
on that one, I'd have to meet with the board on that one simply because that's where it can get really out of hand.
Yeah, but they've picked up a thing there saying they are concerned that the hackers know an awful lot about the company. We believe we should be honest as we can in the negotiation. So you're saying attend the meeting?
I'm saying attend the meeting because that also can give me flexibility in how much I could pay.
Yeah. So you attend the meeting and the shareholders say your presence was appreciated, that your position as CEO is secure for now. Right. I think we're up to time really there.
Yeah, I don't want to be running out of time here with Paul.
Yeah, I don't want to overdo this, but you get a sense, and all the viewers, if they click on that link, they can have a go themselves, and there's an awful lot of learning that can come out with it. Or you employ a company to run a tabletop exercise for you. But hopefully that will have had some assistance to your viewers, and certainly for people who've never been involved in one of these type incidents.
I'd like to leave one other for people watching this. All right. Because there's more than one way to take somebody down, right? One way is through phishing, through an email. But another very common technique that some of these scammers use is browser hijack, okay? So where you're online somewhere and you happen to click on something that may not necessarily be malware, but it's a browser hijack that makes your screen go crazy. There's bells, there's alarms, and it says on the screen that your system has been compromised and that you need to either click or call this particular number to get it rectified. And a lot of people, they don't know what to do. They freak out, okay? And, some of them are real and some of them are not. But one tip that I would like to leave you with, if it's a browser hijack where this thing happens on your screen, you simply, if it's, I only know from a Windows-based computer, Control-Alt-Delete, you click on processes, it'll show you all the running processes on your system, and the browser, let's say you're in Chrome or something like that, you select that particular process that's running and you end that process. So if it's one of those cases, then you'll be able to shut that down before you become a victim by either calling the number on the screen or clicking another link on the screen. Because I had a friend that personally happened to.
Yeah, the browser hijacking often is the case. You get a pop-up, for antivirus to click here to take it under control or whatever, and that's actually the attack right there. So you click it, and that downloads the payload to your computer. Oops.
And sometimes you get sort of those social engineering attacks where you get a phone call and they say it's from the IT department or another department, and they will say, we need remote access to your computer. Can you just click on this file I'm going to send you? And that is the malware. Or you've just given them remote access. So
a lot of old people are targets for those type of attacks.
Yeah.
We don't know.
If you ever get anything like that, just say, yeah, no problems, I'll phone you back, and look up who they are and then phone them back. Don't use the numbers they give you.
Yeah, definitely not. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Another educational hour. Things that people don't think about because they always say, everybody thinks it's never going to happen to me. Right? Never going to happen to me. And unless there's a headline in the news, it's out of sight and out of mind. But I can promise you it is not out of sight and it's not out of mind, because there are people that get paid stupid money. They're employed. They go to work Monday through Sunday to explicitly figure out ways to compromise your systems. And the best time to fix your roof is not when it's raining. So we've got Richard, we've got Adam. These are two guys that are cybersecurity experts. They're in the business that responds to things like this and helps you to set up a plan to protect yourself as best as possible. The phone call is free, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, always.
And then one or two things
Go ahead.
Either A, you're gonna realize that, hey, you know what? I've really got this. I've done all the things that are necessary, and you feel good about that. Or the other thing that could come of that phone call is like, wow, I had no idea. I'm really not prepared for this, and God forbid something were to happen, we'd be screwed. Any final words, gentlemen?
I just want to point out Richard's so dedicated that he's on this call despite the fact it's 2 a.m. in the UK.
I'm going to bed after this one.
Nothing else.
I love speaking to you guys. So
yeah, always great. If anybody wants to contact me, I'm sure you'll have my contact information in the notes there, Paul. So
just click on the link in LinkedIn for Adam's contact info as well as Richard's contact info. And we'll go from there. So thanks for watching, those that watch it live and those that watch it on the replay. Next week, I have an automotive show on vehicle acquisition. That should be pretty interesting, because with the volatility in the used car market today, you need many strategies to successfully stock your shelves. And I'm going to have an expert on next week that this is what he does. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Stay on while we go off here. I wish you all a safe and successful next week, and we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Thanks for watching.
Take care. Bye-bye.